deceit. Telling the truth is a revolutionary act. It's the David Knight Show.
As the clock strikes 13, it's Tuesday, the 11th of August, year of our Lord 2026. Today we got a busy day. We have Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai, who's going to be joining us live in the second hour. And one of the reasons I wanted to get him on is because he's running as an independent candidate. We have Tucker Carlson talking about a new party, a manifesto. What does it take to have a third party? How is the election rigged? Yes, it is rigged not only from start to finish, from ballot access to debates to counting the votes. And the GOP is just as guilty of it as anyone. But we're going to take a look at the Trump executive order to change the child vaccine schedule. What does it do and what does it not do? We'll take a look at that and an update on the Flock data center police surveillance state. There's now a partisan move to try to split the bipartisan opposition to these things. Across the board, everybody opposes these. So we've now got people saying, well, it's these other people, these radicals on the other side, they don't like these things, so you should like them and defend them. That's the game that they're going to play with you. We'll be right back. As a matter of fact, I've seen, if you go to the internet and you search, you'll find one article after the other. The right likes or opposes the data centers, or the left is against the data centers, and blah, blah, blah. Always there to try to fire up the divide and conquer Hegelian dialectic to make sure that, hey, well, you know, if these guys on the left, if the Democrat socialists don't like it for whatever their reasons are, then it must be a good thing. And I mean, seriously, they're doing that type of thing. It's happening more on the right with that, but the left will look at it and say, well, we've got a Georgia activist, a one-time flight attendant, who cut her teeth during the Tea Party wave. She joined the MAGA movement. She helped organize January the 6th. So maybe she's one of those crazy conservative radicals that was there on January the 6th, right? That's the way they point out. And then say, now she has started a new group, active in 37 states against data centers, had 18 rallies on one Saturday, most of those in 37 rallies, and 18 of them were in Texas. But then you look at the right side, and this is the Sun, the New York Sun. The left's crusade against data centers threatens the future of our digital economy. If people actually visit these facilities, they'll be astounded by the jaw-dropping technological wizardry that lies within. Maybe this person's never seen Jurassic Park, doesn't understand why Michael Crichton wrote that. Just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should do it. And you should always take a look at how these wizardry tools are going to be used. And then on the other side, we've also seen that anger over data centers is fueling a new political movement. This is coming from Politico, and they're championing the fact that a leftist here in Tennessee, Justin Pearson, who was one of the Tennessee three, remember he had three legislators who disrupted the Tennessee legislature, shut it down with protests, bringing in people, they were leading the protest. Well, he is a radical leftist. However, he's also become, as they point out, one of the loudest voices amid a growing national backlash against pollution and the politics of America's AI build-out. And so when you look at this, I just got to say to the right, don't lose this opportunity. If Republicans are going to push back against this because you got some high-profile Democrat socialists on, don't abandon this popular issue to them. It is a bipartisan issue. We do not want a police surveillance state. We do not want to have these powerful tools in the hands of government, any government. You should never put these tools in the hands of the police and just hope that they're not going to abuse them. They will abuse them. That's human nature. You will always find people in the system that will abuse it. And there is no way to police the police on this. You know, we had just had primaries here in Tennessee, and you had the three GOP candidates, and two of them, the one who won, Marsha Blackburn, absolutely wrong on all of these issues, on Flock, on data centers, on everything else. And so was the second place runner, who was a congressman running. Monty Fritz got it right, but Monty Fritz did not make this an issue. I couldn't even get him to give me a formal statement. And so I had to infer from it, from other statements that he had where he was on these issues, and he's exactly in the right place, but he wouldn't talk about it. However, the two Democrat candidates for governor, both of them were aggressively opposing these things, and for the right reasons. And they had policies in place to say, here's how we stop this. We're going to let town councils have non-disclosure agreements with companies to keep this stuff hidden. So all of a sudden, boom, what's this thing over here? Oh, well, we've already approved that a couple of years ago, and now it's under construction. You can't stop it. When you look at Marsha Blackburn, it's almost comical what she did. There is a meme that you'll see on social media, and one person puts up, well, China was by far and away the leader in the police state. So America says, hold my beer. We're going to catch up to that.
How hard am I going to crack down on China? Well,
on China?
Marsha Blackburn worked with President Trump to take on communist China. As governor, Marsha will fight to protect Tennessee land from Chinese front companies, close loopholes, and hunt down every communist who tries to defy us.
It doesn't take a fortune cookie to figure it out. Here in Tennessee, we're going to stop communist China and protect Tennessee land.
Yeah, we're going to become communist China. She wants to put everything in that they have done to control their own citizens. Going to beat China by becoming more like them.
We can't have a tyranny gap.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Justin Pearson is over in Memphis, and in the area where he is, they point out, he's got a painting up on his wall, and it is a dystopian picture of a orange skyline American flag in front of it, and a person wearing a gas mask while reading the Bible, and a stack of books that includes George Orwell's 1984. And there you see the picture there, right? And so he's in an area there where there's a 10-minute drive to Elon Musk's Colossus 1 data center, a 15-minute drive to the southeast to Colossus 2, and an army of 69 methane gas turbines located just over the state line of Mississippi that currently powers a supercomputing hub. With most of these without any pollution controls typical of those required by federal rules. So what's going on with this? This is Elon Musk, who became the world's richest man by profiting off of this green MacGuffin, right? The climate MacGuffin, and his greenwashed profits that are there. Now he not even subject to federal regulations on pollution, let alone emissions and heat generation, which is what these people have complained about for years. So the bottom line is, don't let this bipartisan opposition to the police surveillance state, don't allow them to make this a partisan issue and get you to cheer what is happening with this. And a lot of this, as I said, much of it is coming from the right, because people who are conservatives typically have a predisposition to the police. They want law and order. The problem is, who's going to follow the law? When they don't have a law, when they said that you don't have any due process, when they take away your constitutional rights, the Fourth Amendment, what does it mean to be law and order? And they also play the game with them. Oh, we got to have AI there because if we don't have it, the Chinese will have it and they'll have an advantage over us. Well, they're using AI for different things other than the military. They may repurpose it for the military. Nevertheless, their cost, when you just look at it from a business standpoint, their costs are 1% of Anthropic, which is the leading engine out there. And so are you going to pay 100 times more if you're in business to get something from an American company rather than getting it from a Chinese company? I don't think so. What happens, said the Iowa rep that I talked to last week, Iowa State rep. So what happens when they go out of business? Because, their cost factors are 100 times more. Some of the others are not quite as expensive as Anthropic. But what happens when you have this blight of these data centers where they have lost their business? Because that's going to happen down the road. Not every one of these companies is going to survive. Think about that. So the problem is, it's always been a bias for conservatives to support business against any regulation. And it's always been a bias to support the police because you want law and order. But you need to be wise about that. Not every business it should be unregulated. Pharmaceuticals are one, for example, right? Why do they have legal immunity against any damage that they do to children of all people, right? And so there are some things that we need to have government protect our life and our liberty and our property from. And so don't have a knee-jerk reflex to this stuff. Let me just recap what we talked about yesterday. Over the weekend, we had this massive traffic stop, a very dangerous stop. They thought they had somebody that was wanted for murder. You had a lot of police cars boxed in this car, created a massive traffic jam that was up near Milwaukee, I think it was. But here's the rest of the story, as you've heard in the past. This woman was actually flocked and arrested twice in just a couple of days. It was a false arrest in both cases.
Now to a Fox 6 exclusive, scary moments on the interstate as guns are drawn on a woman near Brookfield. Brookfield police say they thought they were pulling over a murder suspect yesterday.
Turns out it was a mistake by another department with the flock license plate reader technology. Ben Hansen spoke with the woman seen on video who says this isn't the first time this happened to her this week.
Like, where could we go? Like, it was just a whole lot. Like,
Amber Newell is still shaken up from Thursday.
I haven't been asleep since this happened. Every time I close my eyes, all I can see is guns.
When Brookfield police surrounded her car on I-94, drew their guns, and told her to come out with her hands up.
My mom
Can you
is my
imagine?
go-to person. I wanted to call her so bad yesterday, but I'm like, if I make a sudden move, it's going to be over. It's going to end my life.
Friday, we learned Newell did nothing wrong.
It was very embarrassing because after they put us in cuffs, they walked us to the car. I'm not knowing what's going on. I'm scared. All you see is people in their cars recording.
Milwaukee police say they accidentally didn't remove the alert previously placed on her vehicle in the flock camera system. At one point, the vehicle was suspected of being tied to a homicide. Eventually, Milwaukee police were no longer interested in the vehicle, but the department didn't cancel that alert. So when Brookfield police saw the vehicle on a flock camera, they responded. Brookfield's chief says his officers did nothing wrong.
The only thing they said was, contact Milwaukee Police Department, it's their fault. That's all they kept saying was, it's their fault. It's not our fault, it's their fault.
MPD declined an interview. Newell says last Monday, the same thing happened when Milwaukee police pulled her over with guns drawn. She says officers never explained why, towed her car, and let her go. Newell says she's still scared to drive her car, and her daughter is too.
My daughter keep asking, Mama, is the police going to get us? She don't want to ride in the car no more because she don't know if the police going to pull us over and do it again.
Now, she's hoping for an explanation and an apology.
I'm really mad at Milwaukee MPD because y'all failed. Y'all failed the system. Y'all failed me. Y'all failed everybody. Like, y'all... I'm traumatized now.
In Milwaukee, Ben Hansen, Fox 6 News.
And of course, that's one example. I could just make a show out of playing these examples. Another one, which is also very egregious. I mean, when you got somebody's a murder suspect and everybody's got their guns drawn, they are on a hair trigger. As she pointed out, it's a very dangerous situation. They could have shot her very easily. There was another case, which I did not, there's a video of it. I'm not going to play it for you. But there was a guy who he was reported that he had a stolen car. Now, in this particular case, they're saying that, well, it's a human error because these guys were supposed to take her license plate that had been put in out of the database. They left it in, and so Flock did its job. Well, in this other case, Flock did not do its job. It misread the license plate and flagged the car. It got one of the characters wrong. It was off by one. The police pull over, guns drawn again because they think this is a stolen car. They get the father and the mother and the 1-year-old child all out of the car. They arrest the father. They put him in the car and lock him up. And the mom's like, what's going on? Can't get any answers. And then they eventually figure out what is happening. And then just say, sorry about that. Drive off. This is why we do not want to have this stuff. I mean, people are going to somebody's going to get killed over this kind of stuff. And so when you talk about privacy, is it something that the Flock CEO believes himself is important? Well, look at this report.
After surveilling the CEO of Flock for 3 days, my private investigator found 3 separate cars, 3 separate routes, and 3 different plates. If the man who made his fortune recording your license plate changes his own every day to preserve his privacy, then what does that tell you about the value of privacy itself? The reality is, the evidence that Flock prevents crime is non-existent. Cities that have been covered in Flock cameras saw the same crime reduction as cities with none, because crime fell nationwide everywhere at the same time. Flock simply stood in front of a falling curve it didn't cause and called it proof.
Like the vaccines.
What this graph is trying to tell us. So it's from the Council on Criminal Justice. It's from 2021 through 2025, and it's for homicides. So this is a crime index. It's saying that nationwide from 2021 through 2025, crime fell 36%. And then it's saying in Houston, Texas, it fell at that exact same rate at 36%. So why is this significant? Why Houston, Texas? Well, there's a big reason why. And because in Houston, Texas, they are very heavily saturated with flock cameras. They have around 3,800 flock cameras in the entire area of Houston. So if you have 3,800 flock cameras, you would expect that the crime rate would fall much sharper. It would be a much more drastic decline, but that's not what we're seeing. Even with 3,800 flock cameras, the crime rate only fell at the national average.
Well, of course, I've got an even better example than that. In Atlanta, Flock's hometown, they've got over 5,000 cameras, as I pointed out last week. Crime was flat or increased in every category. Now, you have one of the categories that it was flat in was automobile crime. You would think that of all things, these automated license plate readers, which is its primary function, you would think that when it came to car theft and other issues like that, that they would have a big effect. They had no effect on the crime statistics as collected by the FBI. But this, as he pointed out, standing in front of a falling curve and taking credit for it, we have seen this done over and over and over again with the pharmaceutical companies and the vaccines. You got a lot of people are getting sick with a particular case, and as it's a particular disease or diagnosis, and as these people create a vaccine, all of a sudden it just falls off, and it's not due to their vaccine at all. Well, one of the things that needs to be done is to make sure that we know what is being done in our communities. And that means we have to get involved in the local community to know what's happening. But we also need to have town councils and city planners that are transparent in what they are approving. This is a new Amazon data center that stoked worries that it'll be the most polluting power plant in the U.S. Amazon is investing in natural gas burning power plant as part of a huge data center in Texas. And as I pointed out before, the New York Times said, well, we're looking at the massive amount of carbon dioxide. They're still worried about that, right? I'm not worried about that, but they are. But we have to lose all of our cars, even though these data centers are doing more pollution than any other power plants. And they're going to give them special exemptions because it is going to provide the tools of tyranny that our federal government so craves. And so they get their exceptions. They get their special favors. Amazon emissions have gone up in each of the past several years. And when they look at this, it's going to soon be equivalent to, when you look at their data center and everybody else's, it'll soon be equivalent to all of the passenger cars in America, just from the data centers. Is that really worth it? When we look at that and we look at what is happening with the Flock stuff, just always remember this graphic right here. Your city spent millions on cameras to spy on you, not on potholes. Think about that. In nearby Knoxville, they spent $9.5 million on roving flying cameras from Axon. They're going to be drone surveillance devices. And that's just the beginning. They're going to have an annual fee of that. That's just to install the things. What if they were to use that to fix the roads? There's a novel idea. There's something to run for if you're going to run for local office. Just stop that. AI data centers are causing an unfathomable amount of air pollution, as they point out. And each new one they build is they don't have to comply with these regulations, just like Musk in Memphis. So in 1 year, they'll rival the output of half the passenger cars in the U.S., and that's just the ones that they've already planned and have under construction. In a California town that is known for producing garlic, Amazon built a data center without anybody knowing about it. They had one person in the planning office that had rubber stamped this. Nobody knew about it until it broke ground and started going up. And this is something that you see over and over again.
And that's California, where, what is it, like 2/3 of the produce in the U.S. is made. So is this going to affect the price of garlic?
I don't know. But, it's also California where they have a lot of regulations and where they are really into all of this climate change and pollution and so forth in a big way. So if they can do that in California, you think they can do it in your red state? There's absolutely no doubt about it. Elon Musk, meanwhile, is going to build the biggest building in the world, spanning a colossal 100 million square feet. Think about that. And he says he's going to turn it into a fabrication center for silicon. He calls it TerraFab, and it's going to be in Texas. He's going to spend $17 billion, 100 million square feet. It'll blow past every structure ever built, instantly become the largest building in the world. For example, some of the bigger ones, Mall of America, 5.6 million square feet. Apple Park is 2.8 million square feet. You have the Pentagon is 6.6 million square feet. He's going to be 100 million square feet. Think about that. Just amazing. And this is just an example of how the extraordinary wealth accumulation of some of these people allowed them to do anything they want. And that includes buying the prostituting politicians who will sell us out for a song. Well, we have a few more minutes here before we need to take a break. So I want to start on the pharmaceutical aspects of what happened. There was a very touching story, Children's Health Defense had it, about where is the outrage about autism? Well, we saw a lot of outrage yesterday as Trump said, well, we're going to change the childhood vaccine schedule. We're not going to have as many of them, and we're going to space them out somewhat. Boy, there was outrage everywhere. Outrage from the Pediatric Society, other physicians. You had Cassidy, who is a physician and an outgoing senator, was furious. And mainstream media, which is, let's be honest, owned by the pharmaceutical companies. They were outraged. Where is the outrage about autism? The guy starts out, he said, if I'd walked in my fourth grade classroom in 1978, told my teacher that one day virtually every school district in America would have multiple classrooms dedicated to children who could not speak, who required one-on-one aids, who wandered, who self-injured, who had seizures, who would require lifelong care, she would have assumed I was describing some dystopian science fiction novel. Yet here we are. Why are we accepting that? What is the matter with these people? When you look at this and how severe this problem is, you have to ask some of these people who are complaining about any change to the vaccine schedule. And unfortunately, it is far too little that he has changed, as he's adding the mRNA flu vaccine that's there, but mandating it by the Navy. Nevertheless, when you look at this, why, as bad as this problem is, you got to ask, why wouldn't you question everything when it comes to cause of autism? They only want to question people who want to question what is causing autism. Those are the people who get attacked, but they don't attack autism itself. They're not interested in exploring every avenue. Where did we see this before? Yeah, we saw this exact game plan because we saw it with COVID, because that's the way these people have always worked. Country artist Tyler Hudson came through the U.S. last week. He's a Texan living in Australia. And on one of his Instagram posts about autism, he did something that really doesn't happen to me anymore, said the writer. After 22 years as an autism dad, it choked me up, he said. And in the post was an excerpt from his new book, The Missing Lyrics. His son is lyric, and his son has severe autism. It discussed a poem written by his daughter about his teenage son with profound autism. He said, I was fine until I got to these words. He's never been to a party. He's never walked into a friend's house. If I could cure him, I would. Acceptance looks really nice on a t-shirt until he bites himself so hard he bleeds. If I could cure him, I would. It's love that makes us fight for a cure, that makes us fight for a life. So you look at this. Isn't this amazing? This, folks, is a picture of how much they hate us And they hate us. They want to kill us. They want to injure our children and kill our children. And who are they? It's Big Pharma and the prostitutes that they've bought in politics and the media and the rest of this stuff. He goes on to say, I remember the world before profound autism became commonplace. He said, that's not nostalgia talking, it's memory. I went to an elementary school in the 1970s, he said. I played Little League. I rode my bike around the neighborhood until the street lights came on. I went to church, summer camp, birthday parties, county fairs, airports, shopping malls, and movie theaters. I sat in packed gymnasiums, crowded cafeterias. I stood in line for the scrambler at the fair, behind 100 kids I'd never met. I was surrounded by children everywhere I went, constantly for my entire childhood. Looking back, I can remember many of them: the kid who always picked his nose, the kid who couldn't stop talking, the class clown, the bully, the shy girl, the future valedictorian. I even remember the girl in my sister's grade with Down's syndrome because there was exactly one. What I cannot remember, not a single time, not once, not anywhere, was a child who couldn't speak, a child who wore a helmet because he smashed his head into the concrete, a child who shrieked uncontrollably for hours, parents wrestling a teenage son twice their size to keep him from hurting himself, a mother scanning a parking lot in panic because her 9-year-old bolted and can't say his own name. I've asked hundreds of people my age the same question. I get the same answer every time, usually a long pause and a puzzled look. They don't remember anybody like that either in their childhood. If those children existed in our world, they were so extraordinarily rare that none of us ever encountered them. That's right. And the most astonishing part isn't that our world changed, it's that we stopped acting like it did. As a matter of fact, if you go back and look, and we don't have the chart in here, do we, for one? Or do we? No, we don't. If you go back and look at the number of vaccines, they had 10 vaccines required in 1983. Autism was 1 in 10,000. It's gone from 10 to 30 to 36 to 72, now to 96. And we're now at the point where amongst boys in 2026, it is 1 out of 20 from 1 out of 10,000. Now, it's kind of interesting to see how it's ramped up as the number of required shots have ramped up. Now, correlation is not necessarily causation, but it's something that should be looked at. When you look at what it's like to have severe autism like this that he's describing, why wouldn't you look at every cause? Why should anything be off limits? And why should the pharmaceutical companies be given immunity for childhood vaccines? They know that, or they wouldn't have put the immunity in there. That's why Fauci did it in the first place, because he knew that even with just a handful of vaccines, it was going to put the vaccine companies out of business because of the harm that they were doing. So he got them childhood immunity. Then they multiplied it, knowing that it was harmful. And that's where we are today. And so...
And about the whole 1 in 20, yeah, people will dismiss it all by saying, oh, they've just expanded what it means to be autistic. You know, they now include largely normal people, which they have done as a smokescreen, I would say, to hide the fact that the extremely autistic people, the ones that, you know, wear helmets and scream, are climbing at a precipitous rate.
That's right. Well, you know, the example that I always go back to is this family in Tennessee. They moved to Tennessee because they wanted to homeschool their kids. Then the mother wanted to get a divorce. And in court, the judge said he was a vaccine proponent. And so it was brought up, and her lawyer knew that. So he brought that up. And the judge was outraged. He thought that was child abuse not to get your child vaccinated. So he said, whichever one of you will agree to get your kids caught up, I'll give that parent custody. And so the mother said, yes, I'll do it. And she did it. And for the daughter, they spread it out because she had already had a couple of, she was the oldest one, she'd had a couple of bad reactions to early vaccines. And so they spread out over a couple of days. For the two younger boys, they gave them all of them at once. They went straight into intensive care. One of them got out after about a week or so in there. The other one was in there longer. When he came out, he's so severely autistic that he's going to be in diapers the rest of his life. Well, we're going to pick up with this on the other side of the break, folks. We will be right back.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
Now, let's pick up with this. The children that we've all seen in the grocery store are becoming adults now, he said. That's not a projection, it's arithmetic. The kids who started arriving in the 1990s and started getting injected with a massive number of vaccines are now in their 30s. The public imagination stops at the sweet, non-speaking 8-year-old because an 8-year-old is easy to feel something about, but nobody has a mental image for a 34-year-old man with the same needs, who is 6 inches taller than his father, who has a raging libido, who has whiskers that he can't shave himself, whose father is 71 and his mother just had a hip replacement. So what do we do about that? Parents are aging out of the ability to lift their own sons. This is all done so that Big Pharma can become billionaires. And so that Fox News and CNN and all the rest of these media whores can make their money as well. Here's an example of how the medical community is always upping the ante. Whether you look at what they have as acceptable blood pressure levels, they have constantly changed that, or you look at the cholesterol measurements, it's always something to sell more drugs, isn't it?
The American Cardiology Association, the American Heart Association came out with a new set of guidelines just earlier this month. And they are a fascinating study in the creation of disease, because according to the recommendations around when you should be testing somebody for high cholesterol have changed. Instead of just testing older people, we should be testing younger people. We should be screening children. We should be getting people to submit to a cholesterol test every 5 years. And the level at which they set the LDL target, this is a kind of low density lipoprotein, is about 100. Something like 25% of the American population has an LDL level that's over that. So if you do the math, the new definition of high cholesterol is about almost 100 million Americans, about a third of the population. This is a massive market. So I've been asking my friends in the cardiology world, like, what's going on here? Why is the industry and these organizations back on cholesterol? And the reason is just so obvious, Alan. It's because there's so much money in it. Because there are new cholesterol lowering drugs. There are new ways to take healthy people and turn them into candidates for which they would be
lifelong customers. And of course, one of the biggest selling drugs out there are statins. And so if they can redefine what is an acceptable level of cholesterol, then they say, well, according to our guidelines, you should be on this drug. And they put the fear of God in you. Not so much fear of God as fear of death, right? So what is behind Trump's order that he just signed? And again, remember the outrage coming from mainstream media, mainstream medicine, about this. This is just cannot be tolerated. They can tolerate autism, but they can't tolerate fewer vaccines for kids. Trump signs an order to limit childhood vaccines and to split the MMR shots. So he signed an executive order. Now, here's the bottom line. This is, folks, a head fake. It is a virtue signal for his people, because his executive order has no effect. These things are set at the state level. He doesn't get to set these recommendations. Now, of course, some of this stuff is coming from the CDC, but he's not going to stop any of that. We just had the FDA approve a new mRNA flu shot and cover up the danger signals on it. The Navy is now mandating it in spite of what War Pete said about the mandated vaccines. They're doing it again. So now they've got an mRNA flu shot that they're going to mandate. So in the executive order, and as they were talking about it on Monday, he said, decades ago, children received only a small fraction of vaccines required today. The order recommends that the number of childhood vaccines drop to 11 from the existing 18 recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics. Now, that in and of itself, that number I've seen repeated on multiple articles, that is a lie. It is a bold-faced lie, folks. They've got 18 conditions that they want you vaccinated for, just like they want you to take statins for the redefined high cholesterol, and they want to have you take blood pressure medication for the redefined blood pressure. I mean, if you go back 40 years, blood pressure was typically, as a rule of thumb, it was the upper number was 100 plus your age, right? But now it doesn't matter what your age is. Oh, if you're above 130 or 40, you need to be taking all this blood pressure medication. So they redefined that to drive business to themselves. So I've seen this figure of 18 all over the place. If you go back and look at the schedule, you'll find that for these 18 different conditions, they're injecting people over and over and over again, sometimes multiple times a year for the same thing. They call them booster shots. But folks, it adds up, because what we're talking about here, in most cases, are the dangerous things like the adjuvants, like aluminum, the preservatives that are in there, like formaldehyde and other things like that. That's what makes these things so deadly, especially in combination when they put these in. And that's why the kid who got the catch-up vaccines and got a whole bunch of them all at once got lifetime autism from it. Think about that. The immunizations recommended for all children under the order are for measles, mumps, rubella, diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, polio, Haemophilus influenza type B, pneumococcal disease, human HPV, and chickenpox, right? So we're reducing them, said Trump. Well, he's not really. You know, they're giving people, maybe they're going to reduce the number of booster shots, but if they're going to play the game and say, well, we're only got 18 different diseases out there that we're going to inject you for, but if they take it from that down to 11 diseases, but then for those remaining 11, you're going to get 4 or 5 shots each. And that's not an exaggeration. You're still back up to 40 or 50. So it's a slight improvement, but it is a head fake. It is virtue signaling. It is a limited hangout. This is just for the base to applaud him. Nothing real here. Nevertheless, the establishment freaked out. And the president suggested the MMR vaccine could be quite lethal if given all at once. He said, experts say, here's where the BBC and all the mainstream media come back and say, well, experts say that allowing time between the jabs means that children are more likely to contract diseases in the interim, or that they're more likely to miss appointments if there's multiple shots. So this is about making sure that you go to your pediatrician frequently, is it? Yeah, got to drum up business for them. It is a RICO business, folks. It is racketeering. That's what the American Pediatric Society is. They've got a lawsuit accusing them of RICO, and I think it is 100% accurate.
And what a ridiculous statement if you just think about that for a second. Are they saying that the vaccines are safer when you take them all together?
Yeah, or, they don't even talk about that. They don't address that.
Yeah, so experts say that allows time to get these diseases between jabs, in case you were about to catch it in the few months in between, if you space it out.
This is this nonsense about herd immunity. And folks, it is nonsense. If you've heard that fantasy, get over it so that you don't become part of the herd, which is what they want you to be part of. So they said, getting the vaccine is much safer than getting measles, mumps, or rubella. Well, no, actually, it isn't. It absolutely is not. We all, in that society that he was talking about, growing up in the 1970s, we didn't have an MMR shot. Isn't that amazing? As he pointed out, he went all these different places where there are tons of kids, waits in line with kids he doesn't know. And he made it through. And we all had measles, and we all had mumps. And so that was the world in which we lived, and we did not have autism at all. But we had those childhood diseases, and they were not serious if you had them in childhood. So the federal government does not have the authority to implement the new recommendations from Trump. Shots that are required for school attendance are set at the state level. So where does that put us? This is the same type of thing that, it's going to be the bad Democrat governors that are going to do it. And Trump is not going to tie any money to this like he did all the COVID rules, the lockdown, the put your mask on, stay 6 feet apart, all those different things. You comply with that, and I'll keep giving you federal funds, and I'll give you increased federal funds. But if you don't do that, I'll take the money away. He's not going to take money away from any of these people, so they're all going to continue to do this. Delaying or skipping shots is risky. That's the message that Senator Bill Cassidy wants you to think about. He said, vaccines are overwhelmingly safe. Vaccines are effective. And Senator Cassidy is lying to your face. So is Fox News and the rest of these creeps. Just take a look at this. This person put this up, said, I took this photo at our pediatrician's office this morning. Attention student athletes. Sports physicians are done primarily to make sure that you feel that you're not at a high risk for sudden cardiac death on a playing field. So now, in many jurisdictions, they are, because they force these vaccines on kids, they now have to do cardiac analysis on them before they're allowed to play in sports because they've had so many kids drop dead. That's never happened before. It's just like the autism thing. Why should we have a situation where, and they even point out, COVID vaccination affects your risk, but they still push it on kids, don't they? So if you've received doses of any COVID shots, we will not be able to clear you to compete in sports without performing this work, and possibly an echocardiogram to look at potential heart damage. But Senator Bill Cassidy, that lying prostitute, wants to tell you that, lecture you, vaccines are overwhelmingly safe. And now they've got an mRNA flu shot that they're going to be pushing out to everybody as well. How often and how many vaccines children in the U.S. receive is based on the times when the vaccines will work the best with their immune system. Yeah, like immediately after birth, when they don't have an immune system, they can handle that, and certainly can't handle the aluminum and the other contaminants that they put in there, they call adjuvants. They put things in deliberately to trigger your immune system. And sometimes that triggering never stops. So when you're talking about vitamin K and hepatitis shots, they give these things to infants. You got that timed? Is that correct? No, what we're seeing here, folks, is a magician's trick. Yeah, the pharmakia, the sorcerers, right? This is a magician's trick, a trick of misdirection that Trump is doing. Now, watch this hand over here, and while you're watching that hand, he's got the other one doing something else, right? This is an executive order over something that he has absolutely no authority over. He's not going to stop the 1986 Legal Immunity Act that Fauci rammed through and got Reagan to sign. He's not going to stop that. He's not going to stop the mRNA stuff. Yeah, they're going to no longer recommend it, but they're going to do it anyway. They're still going to do the COVID shots. This is what I criticized Florida for. I said, it's great that you got Latipo and DeSantis down there, the Surgeon General of Florida, the governor of Florida, saying, well, we don't want to recommend these for anybody. But why wouldn't you stop it when you see how harmful it is? That is fraud, and that is harm being conducted on people. You are there as government to protect the life and liberty of people. The FDA is there to make money for pharmaceutical companies. You need to step up and do the right thing. Still requiring a vax, just fewer of them, and spaced out a little bit. But now he's going to add the mRNA flu shot to all of this stuff as well. So yet again, we see a head fake from Trump. But there is no end to the complaining throughout mainstream media, both in America and abroad. They're outraged about this. Trump upends the childhood vaccine schedule, including splitting up the MMR shot. Imagine that. The executive order would call for states to reconsider guidance for vaccine requirements for schools. It's a nothing burger. There is absolutely nothing to this. And yet, look at the outrage. And look at the acceptance of children having heart attacks when they play. Look at the acceptance of severe autism. That's what these people are willing to accept because they hate you, they hate your children, they want to kill and cripple all of us. Citing no evidence, Trump alleges that the MMR vaccine, long a boogeyman of any anti-vaccine activist thanks to a long discredited study by a disgraced British ex-physician. No, Andrew Wakefield is not disgraced. What they did to him was a disgrace to the medical community. Everybody sees it. Just like what they did to people who pushed back against the COVID pandemic garbage. It was a disgrace for them. It wasn't a disgrace to the people who got purged out of the medical system. It just showed what a disgraceful medical system we have. They don't give you information, or if they do, it's a lie. And if they don't want your consent, of course. So it also removed the recommendations for the COVID-19 jabs, but did not remove the COVID-19 jabs. And I talked about that as well. I keep thinking of that movie. It was called Montenegro. The only thing I remember about that movie was that she had this basset hound. We had a basset hound. It was a great-looking basset hound. And this woman was having this mental crisis, and she put some poison in the milk, and she says, well, the dog's name, well, Rover, that's poison in that milk. If I were you, I wouldn't drink it. But here it is, And I said, that's exactly what DeSantis and Latipo and Trump are really doing with this stuff. If you know that it's poison, why would you leave it there available when you know that you also have commercials on TV and talking heads on TV and crooked physicians who will do anything to their patients for money? When those people are urging them to drink it or to inject it, why would you put that poison out? And so when you look at the mRNA flu vaccine, Trump giveth and Trump taketh away, doesn't he? So the first mRNA flu vaccine, and the FDA has played a very shady game to hide the serious safety signals, a part of this. As they point out, Children's Self-Defense, legacy media coverage focused almost exclusively on efficacy. Serious problems with the trial data published in the New England Journal of Medicine, and yet that was relegated to an appendix behind a paywall. And so the reality is that they are the big headline that they've got out there is like, look, we got this mRNA flu vaccine. It's 26% improvement over the old flu vaccines. And I got to say, how does that math work? What is a 26% improvement over zero, Lance? Do you know what that is? It's kind of like dividing by zero. I guess it's whatever you want. It doesn't make any sense at all. So what they did was they had a study where they compared people who got this mRNA flu vaccine to people who got the traditional flu vaccine. And the study evaluated an optimized version of their vaccine. But in reality, in absolute terms, the vaccine reduced the risk of illness by only 0.8%. So they overstate its efficacy, saying that it's 26% more effective than the other flu vaccine, which again begs the definition. Most of the people who get the flu vaccine wind up getting the flu. Most concerning, however...
I guess they're saying that the regular one is 0.6% effective. This kind of sounds like it's just noise in the statistical data.
That's right. Most concerning, however, were the serious adverse event data, which was buried behind a paywall in the appendix. Here's the reality, folks. 6-month data. And when we're talking about, first of all, let me say what the serious adverse events are. They point out they're not mild events. They're usually severe enough to require hospitalization, to threaten life, to cause significant disability, or result in death. So that's what we're talking about. Hospital, disability, and death. And with the regular flu, after 6 months, the regular flu shot had 389 of those events. This is just so incredibly crazy when you actually look at the data. But the new mRNA flu shot was not 389, it was 449. So they had an extra 60 people who had serious adverse events.
And that's, the ones that have an immediate reaction. The thing about mRNA is that they kept on seeing long-term problems come up a long time after receiving the dosage with a lot of these mRNA tests. That's why none of them passed the testing before they ignored all of that.
That's exactly right. And so, when we look at this, the flu vaccine was already the most widely reported thing causing injuries before you had the COVID-19 vaccine. So now what they're doing is they're ramping it up. They're taking the flu vaccine, which is most widely reported as damaging things. Now they're going to make it mRNA to make it even more damaging, and significantly by that as well. Well, we're going to take a quick break. Before we do, I want to thank the people who have sent us checks for the month of August so far. Brent and Ingrid S., Joel B., Matthew H., Thomas W., Anthony T., Aaron F., Scott and Samantha T., and JM in Florida. Thank you so much, all of you. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back.
analyzing the globalists' next move. And now, the David Knight Show.
Well, Dr. Shiva is going to be joining us at the top of the hour. We're going to be talking about running as an independent candidate, third-party candidate, and what the system actually looks like to you when you do that. I've had some experience with that as well. Before we get to that, I want to talk about Tucker's new manifesto and his talking about a third party. But even before I get to that, I want to really quickly, this is someone who did us a huge favor. Roger at Five Rivers Land Company in Dandridge, Tennessee, was a person who came to our rescue. We would not have made it here because we had so many people who couldn't get off the ball, couldn't get off the mark and get things going. We had a bank that really messed with us, and we nearly lost our deposit as well as this house that we're in right now. And he heard me talking about it, and he contacted me and said, hey, I'm in the area. I can do an appraisal if you need an appraisal. And he did it, and he did it right away. He turned it around right away, and so I really do appreciate that. He has a real estate company here, Five Rivers Land Company in Dandridge, Tennessee, and he has a house that he wanted me to tell people about. It's a special house that they have a motivated seller who is retiring. It has been a lifelong farm homestead for he and his family. As a matter of fact, this goes back to the 1800s, this property, built in 1890. 14 acres, so it's ready as a farm. It's a farmhouse with acreage, a motivated seller. Make an offer on all or part of the land. He said, zoned agriculture, so bring your horses, cows, and chickens and grow a garden. Great tasting well water. Vintage 1890s house with authentic wood paneling and other things that are, you can find that on Zillow. And so if you want to contact him, his email is fiveriversland, and that's spelled out F-I-V-E, at protonmail.com. And we'll put the link to that in the show notes. Just it looks like a great house. And as I said, the person needs to retire, and they're a motivated seller, so get in contact with them. Let's talk a little bit about what Tucker is doing here in terms of a lot of people are saying, well, this is all what MAGA really wanted in the first place. He also, as some of the reports are saying, Raw Story says, well, he hurls Epstein in Trump's face again as he launches a MAGA takeover. Well, I don't know. When I look at these types of things, I always look, especially because of the Tea Party. When the Tea Party came out, I looked at it and it's like, okay, so yeah, taxes are too high. We're taxed enough already. That was what they were talking about with the Tea Party. Well, what is your solution? Do we, what do we do in terms of spending? What are we going to cut? Or do you want to, you don't want to raise taxes anymore. So what do you want to cut? Or do you just not care about the deficit? And there was no clear philosophy or principles really coming from the Tea Party. It was just a movement of frustration. And I felt the same way with MAGA as well, except it also added a cult of personality. So what's the big idea behind Tucker's manifesto? What is the principle under which people are going to organize, or is it going to be another cult of personality? That's what I always look for. So he has unveiled this 10-point manifesto, and part of it is attacking Epstein, which, again, it is an easy target to go after. But he also called for punishing officials who lie. He said we've been deceived about things like the JFK assassination and about 9/11. And he said we need to have people who are honest in government. And so when I look at that, it's like I agree with a lot of things that Tucker is saying today. I've had a lot of disagreements with him in the past, and I haven't really heard him correct the record. He has had things like he said, well, you can't talk about Building 7 or you get fired. And he did not talk about that. But when you look at some of the other things that he had to say, here's a clip from Tucker Carlson, folks, 3 days before the Friday the 13th that Trump issued that executive order to lock everything down. Here's Tucker Carlson preparing the way like he was some kind of a satanic John the Baptist for this pandemic that was going to be unleashed on us.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. The Chinese coronavirus epidemic turns out to be just that, an epidemic. There's no denying that now. According to the official count, this country has recorded more than 500 cases of the virus and suffered at least 24 deaths. The real number is without question far higher than that. Soon we will have a better sense of just how much higher. By then, this epidemic will have caused economic damage whose effects may dog us for years. People you know will get sick. Some may die. This is real.
Is it? This is real. Be afraid. Be very afraid. And that was 3 days before Trump issued the order. They were preparing it for him to do that. And when you look at what he did with other issues, and I think this is during COVID, that he's under eating chocolate-covered crickets because they want you to eat chocolate-covered crickets.
Chocolate covering a cricket?
Yeah, correct, yeah.
What part of the cricket?
The entire, well, the legs are shaken off, but it's pretty much the entire cricket.
Including the loins?
The loins are included in that piece, yeah, that's right.
I love it.
That's delicious.
I love your willingness.
Well, you know, it was crickets when it came to talking about Building 7 for Tucker Carlson, wasn't it? He did not want to talk about it at all.
Do you have any evidence that there were bombs in the building?
Sure. Let's start with the collapse of Building 7. Can you roll the video clip that I sent to you?
Okay, I'm not sure if we can, but to specify.
Maybe there's some kind of code. You just don't show the collapse of Building 7. I don't know what it is.
They don't care if you think the Earth is flat. It's not a threat to anyone. But if you say, like, what actually happened with Building 7? Like, that is weird, right? It doesn't, like, what is that? Right. If you were to say something like that on television, they'd flip out. They would flip out. You'd, like, lose your job over that. Why?
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about that. I'd lose my job.
It collapsed on September the 11th, 2001. It had not been hit by an aircraft. It had been damaged by falling debris and fire. But by 5:20 p.m., most of the fires had been extinguished. Although the building was 47 stories high, it doesn't fall sideways, nor collapse unevenly.
Controlled demolition.
For this to have happened, all of the building's vertical supports must have given way at almost exactly the same time. Yet the Federal Emergency Management Agency reported that the collapse was due primarily to fire. But what does it look like to you?
Yeah, it looks like something that Tucker Carlson doesn't want you to see. Something he won't allow being played on his show. And so his 10 points are basically, a lot of these don't even have anything to do with government. The first two do. Fair, we ought to have the same rules apply to presidents, federal agents, and elites and to Jeffrey Epstein, right? And so, yeah, we want to have a legal system that is blind, that is a same standard for everybody. He said, we also should have sovereignty. We shouldn't be controlled by foreign nations like Israel. Well, I agree with that as well. Those are both government things. But then he gets into things like beautiful. He talks about urban planners that are uglifying American cities and have brutalist architecture and a whole bunch of other things. Yeah, you should have a lot of kids. These are not the roles of government. And he doesn't have anything that he is talking about in terms of what he would do about the things that actually are about government. We'll talk more about this when we come back. We got to take a quick break at the top hour. We'll be right back.
In a world of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. You're listening to The David Knight Show.
Welcome back. And while we're waiting for Dr. Shiva to join us, let me just go down some of these things in a little bit more detail. As I pointed out, first thing, he just lists these manifestos that government needs to be fair, sovereign. We need to be productive, beautiful, healthy, honest, optimistic, generalized things like that, for which he doesn't really have any solutions. But again, I agree that we don't have a just system. It is not fair and equitable to everybody. And we are not sovereign. We're controlled by Israel. But when he goes into productive, I got to ask, What is the government's role in this? He said America should rebuild farming, manufacturing, and craftsmanship while rejecting an economy that is dominated by finance, real estate, speculation, surveillance systems, and weapons. Well, what do you do to rebuild your farms and things like that? Do you get rid of regulations? If so, say so. That's what I think needs to happen. What does he think should happen? Is government going to rebuild farming, manufacturing, and craftsmanship? Or are the people going to do that? And what is government's role in that? The government's role is to get out of the way. And then he says, beautiful. He says, Carlson said, urban planners deliberately have uglified American cities. They betrayed brutalist architecture, graffiti, public drug use, violent crime. It's a deliberate attack on the public. Again, what is government's role in all of this? And does he then support Trump's neoclassical, gilded architectural approach that he's running across Washington? Is that really what the solution is? I don't really understand where that falls in all this. He doesn't see actually the CIA's role in pushing a lot of these architectural issues, as well as a lot of the social and sexual and drug issues. Those are things coming from the CIA. Say so. Except Carlson is also coming from the CIA. If you look at it, I've never known anybody, I've said this in the past, I've never known anybody who's had family members who are in the CIA. But his dad ran their mouthpiece, Voice of America, for many years. And Alex Jones had family members who were proud of the fact they were in the CIA. And interestingly enough, they both got family members who were named Buckley. Immediately, family, there's a lot of overlap there and all of that. Honest, government officials should be punished for lying to citizens about the JFK assassination, 9/11, he said. What about media figures like Tucker Carlson that lied to the public about 9/11 and covered that up? Should there be any accountability for that? And then he said, optimistic, he argued that children are a biological imperative and the foundation of long-term thinking. And he blamed childless leftists for all of our problems that we have here. Look, let's understand. This is another one of these issues. What is the role of government in terms of making sure that we got more children? Do you want to stop the childhood vaccines, make sure we got healthy children? Make sure that we don't have, you want to do something in terms of the garbage that is in our food and water, our drugs? You want to talk about that? What exactly should we do about all this stuff? That's not really the role of government. The government should be involved in some of the things that are taking that away, but that really is a spiritual issue. And downstream from the spiritual issue is the cultural issue. And quite frankly, the government has been very involved in terms of opposing families and policies that make it difficult to have families, but he doesn't address that. He says we need to be wise, and he says schools should teach. All right, stop right there. Yeah, if you want to be wise, don't send your kids to schools to be taught. It's just, and so then he goes through his laundry list of things he doesn't like that schools are teaching right now. Let's understand, folks, that conservatives thought it would be a great idea to have schools because they'd make great citizens out of our children. So they pushed government schooling. Then the left took it over. That is where wisdom lies. To understand, don't set up structures that can be taken over by people that you disagree with, that can be then used to coerce and propagandize children or adults. And he says, decent. He said the U.S. should apologize and pay restitution for killing non-combatants and reverse Trump's Department of War. Well, I agree. We should maybe in any of this, I don't see anything about following the Constitution. You know, when you go back and you look at the 10-point plan of Newt Gingrich, his contract with America, he had specific policies that he was going to enact in Congress. And in a sense, I guess this is kind of meant to be an echo of that and give a general sense of where he wants to see the country go. But there's no concrete issues in there at all. And of course, neither this plan nor Newt Gingrich's plan talked at all about the Constitution. That's why when I ran for Congress, I said, here's my, as the election cycle after Newt Gingrich, I said, here's my 10-point plan for America. It's called the Bill of Rights. But anyway, we got our guest ready. So I want to go without any further ado to Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Good morning, David. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. And I wanted to talk to you. I don't know if you heard me. I was just talking about Tucker's manifesto. and what is there and what is not there. And it's very much a limited hangout. It's very much just kind of a mom and apple pie type of thing with no concrete examples of anything that are there. What's your take on the third party aspect? You're running for Congress again. You've had a lot of, or Senate, I should say. You've had a lot of experience in terms of running as an independent candidate. And you know how the major parties push back against anything that's not under their control. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so a couple of things, David. I want to make my sort of commentaries on Tucker Carlson. I call him something else. I'm being kind.
Yeah, I know.
He is a limited hangout. He comes from a CIA family. And I think when I speak about what he's doing, it is an opportunity for people to really learn this repeated lesson that the swarm is very, very creative, and how it continues to distract people from building a true independent bottoms-up movement. So I'll talk about that. But before that, what I want to let people know is that I'm a big proponent that when you look at history and you look at the evidence, it has always been independent, bottoms-up movements from everyday people that has changed anything for humanity, period.
Yep.
Anything that has oppressed people, enslaved people, or has always come from top down. And it has always been a manipulation, sometimes presented as though it's going to save people. So that's from the time of Christ or even before till today.
Yeah.
Christ was the obvious establishment. He was fighting the Romans, but the not so obvious was the Sadducees and the Pharisees, who acted like they were preaching the words of God. And we don't, and Tucker Carlson falls into that same realm as the Sadducees and the Pharisees. The establishment knows how to create fake versions of real fighters and manipulate people. And I can't see anyone taking Tucker Carlson seriously at all, just a face that he makes, absolute insincerity. But we'll come back to that. But I've spent my whole life, David, as you know, being a proponent of this, having grown up in a caste system in India before I came to the United States. And then having studied what America's truly about, it's always been bottoms-up movements that have changed everything. So when I ran against Elizabeth Warren in 2017 and 18, we ran as independents. And I just want to let people know that the establishment does this repeated mantra that you're wasting your votes when you vote for independents, and independents can't do anything. The reality is, what I share with you will show that as an independent candidate, as an independent force, our movement has always led the way and has many, many victories. And I want to walk people through that so we break through this brainwashing. So, for example, if you look at in 2017-18, we ran as independents, and we ran on a campaign of only the real Indian can defeat the fake Indian. Now, that slogan itself was a very powerful slogan. People loved it.
Yeah, it was very clever.
Yeah, it was a great slogan. I mean, I have two guys doing some masonry work in the house, two hardworking guys, and they said, "Oh, yeah, we voted for you, Dr. Shiva. We love that slogan. We still have the signs we saved. We had a picture of me and Elizabeth Warren in a headdress, and it said, only the real Indian can defeat the fake Indian." But anyway, the key part of that independent movement that we did, and the Republicans didn't like it. The GOP here didn't like us saying that. And obviously the Democrats didn't. But what it did was, from the time we started doing it, and the thousands of flyers and huge posters we put up, if you look at the time that it started, we really started this whole thing about Elizabeth Warren, fake Indian ancestry, in a much more deeper way to reflect that she's actually the racist. Meaning defining racism as someone who uses race for their political advancement, for their capital advancement. That's racism. Someone calling people names, that's just ignorance. But Elizabeth Warren practices racism because she used race to, garner her wealth.
That's right.
And that's racism, using race. And so that, and me saying that as a Indian, but not an Indian, depending on how you look at it, was quite hilarious for people. And I think it really took off. But we forced that fake Indian to take the DNA test. We had these huge signs, 8-foot by 10-foot signs everywhere. People would put them on their lawns. And she couldn't get away. Her own party forced her to take that test. And they had to throw in Peruvian genes to even get her up to one out of 1024. But the point was, we destroyed her her aura,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
That always, so we started that in 2017 and it just took off. That was an independent movement. After we did that, then Donald Trump came and he started, I offered her my $10 million building in Cambridge if she could prove she was, an Indian. And then Donald Trump Jr. did it. And Trump tried to take credit for that. But it was our movement of everyday people who put up these huge signs, massive signs everywhere. People would take their lawns on highways. That's what exposed Elizabeth Warren. That is the power of an independent movement. That's one entertaining example, but nonetheless, it shows what happens when things come bottoms up. And by the way, who's the guy, Matt Schlapp? Complete, I don't have enough four-letter words to describe him. When we went to CPAC, very interesting story. In the middle of this campaign, we paid $2,500 for our booth. We went there. We got confirmation, but when we showed up, they wouldn't let us in. They didn't like our fake Indian, real Indian. Anyway, one of our guys said, screw this, and he sneaked into the hall, and we just set up our booth. The idiots didn't even know we were there. So we were there for 2 days, and everyone loved our booth. And then we started handing out our flyers, and then Matt Schlapp had the police throw us out. Okay? But that's Matt Schlapp. So the GOP did not like the slogan, just to let everyone know. But it was the independent movement and us getting on the ground that forced Elizabeth Warren to take the DNA test, completely destroyed her character and exposed her as a racist that she is. So that's one example of the power of an independent movement. Now, in 2020, we ran again for Senate against a guy called Markey. We still had our movement, but we said, okay, a bunch of the Trumpers were like, oh, Dr. Shiva, we love you. Why don't you run as a Republican? We still had our independent movement. We ran under the Republican banner. We raised $2 million, all small dollar donations. We had huge, signs 2020. We were running against a guy called Ed Markey. And the GOP, top down, they find a guy called O'Connor, nice Irish name, in Boston. Give him $250,000. The guy couldn't even raise $1. We raised $2 million bottoms up. And on election night, even the GOP chairman said, you guys won the election. And that's where in Massachusetts, 9 counties, and one of the 9 counties, Franklin County, we won by 10 points, where all the ballots are hand counted, paper ballots. And in all the other 8 counties, we lose 60-40, 60-40, 60-40, 60-40. To a candidate in the primary no one even knew. But again, if you came to Massachusetts, you would see huge billboard signs, 25,000 lawn signs, 10,000 bumper stickers, 3,000 volunteers. This guy didn't even have one lawn sign up.
And let me jump in here and say, I've seen this over and over again. We see candidates who they show up and there's like 2 people that are there at the meeting, and yet you got somebody else that's get big crowds. And I've seen this over and over again. And who wins the election? It's the guy who's got 2 people who show up to see him. Right. So there's something definitely wrong with elections that turn out like that, I think.
Yeah. So I'm just changing this for you. So what happened out of that election? Again, we moved our campaign to a write-in campaign, David. Okay. Again, key thing to even though we ran as an R, we were an independent movement. So we were quickly able to move the campaign to a write-in campaign. So we're still a bona fide candidate. We collected all the signatures to get on the ballot. And it was in that period of September, our movement said this doesn't make sense. We went to the Secretary of State and demanded to see verification that we had, quote unquote, lost the election. And the verification of that is we demanded something called the ballot image. Now, when you go to vote, if you're not doing a paper ballot and you vote on paper or an electronic voting machine, your ballot goes through a machine. A photograph is taken of your paper ballot.
Right.
That photograph is then tabulated. Okay. So what is the ballot? Is it the paper? No, it's the image. And that image is called a ballot image. So I just want to emphasize this to every American listening. 99% of Americans don't know this. Your paper ballot is photographed and the photograph is tabulated. Now, we know that the photograph could have all sorts of erroneous marks. Digital images can be manipulated much faster than this. But it is the photograph which is used to tabulate your vote. That photograph is officially called a ballot image. Ballot image, the image of the ballot. So we went to the Secretary of State in September after we quote unquote lost this election. We demanded the ballot images. Our movement did. We have it on photograph. The Secretary of State of Massachusetts said, ha, 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 we deleted those images. We don't have to preserve them. We turned the switch off. Now, when the paper ballot goes through the machine, a picture is taken in local memory. It has to be, just like if you opened your computer and you created a Microsoft Word document, right? The Word document is created. You may decide not to save it, but it is created in memory. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to work on it. Well, in this case, on the machine is a setting. Save image, delete image. They set it to delete. By a federal law passed during the Civil Rights era, 50 years ago, by Democrat majority, all records in connection with a federal election, U.S. Senate is a federal election, must be preserved for 22 months. And in fact, it was Biden's DOJ and which clarified it beyond a shadow of a doubt that ballot images also need to be preserved. So it's absolutely clear. It's a federal law. Well, Massachusetts is deleting them. So when we found that out, our movement, I as a leader of the movement with my nearly 3 million followers on all my social media, put out Massachusetts deleted ballots, the ballot images. Deleted 1.7 million ballot images, right? I said ballot images, the ballots which are used in electronic machines. That starts going viral. I get thrown off Twitter.
Wow.
Okay. That was in September 24th, 2020. And then one of these fact-checking organizations wrote a hit piece on me saying, oh, Dr. Shiva's lying. Ballots were not deleted. I never said ballots. I said the ballot images. But in that news article, they stated that they had contacted the Secretary of State of Massachusetts, and he admitted he had contacted Twitter to silence me. Now, this is a grossest violation of the First Amendment.
Yes.
No lawyer in Massachusetts wanted to take it on. I had to write the briefs. Our movement raised more money to support all of our legal filings. And in federal court, I represented myself against 3 Harvard-trained lawyers from the Attorney General's office of Massachusetts. And we win that lawsuit, the preliminary injunction. And it was in federal court. We cross-examined the social media director of the Secretary of State, young girl, and young woman, and she admits, the judge and I asked her, how did you decide to throw me off? Oh, we were very concerned. He was saying ballots were deleted. And then the judge said, what did you do? Oh, we have a special VIP portal. And it's all on transcript, where we went to Twitter and told them to silence Dr. Shiva. And then they did. And the judge said, how did you feel? Oh, we felt relieved. And the judge says, I'm sitting under a photograph of William Brandeis. Do you guys know what the First Amendment is? Why didn't you simply respond to his bad speech with your good speech? Anyway, he gave us a preliminary injunction, which is very hard to get. Told Galvin, you cannot go on Twitter and silence Dr. Shiva. But this was after the election ended, you see? Then I got put back on Twitter and thrown off again when I shared the same fact. Then the judge called Twitter into the courtroom. Now it was me against 7 lawyers. This is in May of 2021. We have a massive movement, and we're the ones who found that all governments have this unholy alliance with social media companies. We wrote to Effer Carlson, if that's okay, and Glenn Greenwald and said, hey, look, this is one of the most historic cases. We've shown that government and social media companies are doing stuff. And you can go to winbackfreedom.com and you'll see everything documented, including my emails to Tucker Carlson. He did nothing, David. He silenced it.
Yeah.
And Glenn Greenwald silenced it.
Like he silenced the architects who wanted to question Building 7 collapsing in its footprints.
Exactly. So when the proverbial shoot is hitting the fan, right, these grifters who are part of the establishment, they work for the CIA, they're agents of the swarm, hit everything. Then they wait 2-3 years, promote it to get credit for something. It's after someone's been raped and killed, you talk about it, and you try to win a Pulitzer Prize. But when the person's getting raped and killed, you intentionally do not do anything because for two reasons. You don't want Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai to get the limelight as a hero who exposed this, because that means we build our own brand equity independent of you. And second, you are actually against this news because you don't want to expose to the public the unholy alliance between government and private companies. But we won the TRO. And then after we started exposing this, David, the judge tried to bribe me through a lawyer he appoints for me. He says, oh, you're doing so well. I want you to do better. And the lawyer said, drop all the cases against the government and just go back on Twitter. He'd be a great hero. I refused. And then we were lambasted. And it's all documented. But the important point is that was in 2020. It was an independent movement which showed the unholy alliance. And then there was Booby Kennedy, who tried to take credit for that, and others, right? But we were the ones who brought this up. We were the ones who exposed it to, the world. An independent movement did that, independent of the establishment. That's a number 2 victory. Let me give you another example. It was in 2020, as an MIT PhD, as a world-renowned scientist on the immune system. I got invited in 2019 to deliver the prestige lecture where they only invite one scientist at the National Science Foundation on the immune system. I was giving talks like, the vaccine model of 1915 doesn't make sense, when you just apply a single vax model to upregulate, antibodies. The immune system is much more profound, and everyone agreed with this. But as a scientist, I was the one in 2020 who led the Fire Fauci campaign, #Fire Fauci. We wrote to Rand Paul. He didn't do anything. He waited 1 year to use our tag to raise money. Now, and again,
well, in fairness, Rand did do something. He had his wife buy stock in Gilead Pharmaceutical.
Yes, sorry, he did do something for himself. But the point is, it was an independent movement. We collected 108,000 signatures. I drove our bus day and night in the middle of COVID down to the White House, delivered these signatures to the White House and the Republican National Committee, and wrote a letter to Trump. It's out there. Marla Maples hand-delivered it to Trump. It says, do not shut down the economy. As an MIT PhD in biological engineering, as a foremost scientist on the immune system, here is a protocol that you can use to help save people, which was zinc, vitamin D. The whole thing was written out. That protocol went viral. Zelenko stole my protocol and started making money off of it. But we saved a couple 100 million people's lives at minimum. But it was our movement which did that. Again, Booby Kennedy was promoting lockdowns. You can find his tweet. March of 2020 says lockdowns will save the climate. It's good, right? Except me, except our movement, we did the Fire Fauci campaign, got 108,000 petition signatures, delivered them to Trump. They did nothing. That's an independent movement. So our movement saved lives. And in that same year, in 2020, is when, after I saw my election stolen, is we're the ones who figured out on the machines, not Mike Lindell, who's a complete grifter Maximus. And Mike tried to enroll me into his thing until I figured out what he was about. He was about using this to sell pillows. But the real issue is that on the machines, there is a feature called a weighted race feature where you can flip votes. So if 2 candidates are running, you can multiply the votes of one candidate by 2. So if you got 1,000 votes, he gets 2,000 votes. And the other candidate got 1,000, you can multiply it by 0.5. It is a feature in the manuals that was designed for housing associations. They quote unquote left this feature in on election machines. So it was I who discovered that, shared it. And I must have done day and night without being paid a penny. 30 different analyses. We ran 3,000 audits, educated people on where we showed the number of voters that came in didn't match the number of votes. That was done by our movement. And then Mike Lindell and these guys came in. And then Trump came in, stopped the steal. And they tried to hijack our core findings and made money off of it. Trump made $500 million off of my work. And you can read his emails. Yeah. He's putting in my work. Yeah. Okay. But an independent movement found the heart of the election integrity issue, which is this weighted race feature and the deletion of ballot images.
Yeah, going back to 2014, when we talked on the phone, I told you, I said, we had a candidate who ran in a local election. And again, that's not under the federal rules, but this was the guy who was running the Board of Elections in Texas, brought in by the Republicans, was somebody who had worked at the Rose Law Firm with Hillary Clinton. They brought this guy in to run the elections, and every single election, and this would include the federal elections as well, although that wasn't part of her case, but every one of the elections, he would tell all the counties delete your ballot images. And she said, this is blatantly corruption. You know, you're supposed to keep that stuff. Under the Texas Constitution, you're supposed to keep it. And yet he would tell people to do exactly the opposite. So we know what's happening. You know, they're hiding this stuff. They're adding weighted measures to these different issues when they got it an electronic voting machine. And again, you found that stuff as well independently.
Yeah, and we did the analysis in Michigan. Then Rudy Giuliani and the Arizona Senate called us in. I did all the ballot image analysis, not the garbage. So what happens when you actually find real stuff, David, the heart of something, the CIA and the deep state or swarm establishment will have other people suddenly start talking about this real issue, but pollute it with crap.
Yeah, that's right.
Mike Lindell was talking about IP addresses changing. This idiot Jovan Pulitzer, whose name isn't even that, it's Jeffrey Fulia. That's his name. He was brought in. That's his name. And Philya, look it up, okay? He started talking about bamboo, right? So the bottom line is, and this is a classic CIA technique.
Yeah, it is. It is.
When
contaminate it, make it ridiculous, and make it unbelievable. Take the truth and make it unbelievable. Yeah.
Make it unbelievable. But the heart of the issue is a true election integrity issue, is that ballot images, which are the ballots, are being deleted to cover up the fraud. Now, so again, independent movements are the ones who exposed Elizabeth Warren and destroyed her, exposed her racism. It was the independent movement which started the Fire Fauci campaign. It was the independent movement which exposed unholy alliance between media and social media government and social media companies. It is the independent movement of Truth, Freedom, Health, and our Senate race which exposed the real issues with election integrity, which is ballot images are being deleted, okay, to cover up election fraud, and both parties are doing it. These were all done by an independent movement, which is massive victories for the American people. Now you go to, then our movement ran again in 2024, David, for president. And there we wanted to show this fundamental issue that all citizens are created equal. Meaning to run for the office of president different than becoming president. Okay? First Amendment rights lets anyone run. So we ran. And even though I was born in India, by the way, natural born is never defined. The Marquis de Lafayette was made a natural born citizen. Okay? But the 14th Amendment says the Equal Protection Clause, all citizens naturalized and natural born are equal. Okay? So we challenged that. We got on write-in in pretty much many states, but we officially got on 14 states. 7 threw us off, 7 kept us. And in fact, Mississippi kept us, what you would call red states. It went all the way up, by the way, to the Supreme Court. In fact, one is still there. But the point is, our movement did this, right? Which means our movement pushes the envelope. It wasn't all done by us, no top-down lawyers. So in this election, what we did, David, was, again, we have our movement, independent movement. And we predicted when we started this that people will start seeing fake independent movements coming up, a la F.R. Carlson, Tucker Carlson, because the establishment has all this data from Palantir. And the goal of the establishment is one goal: to make sure you listening right here, that you don't get off your own butt and you don't understand, you don't be a good citizen, you don't understand how the dynamics of oppression work, and you don't take your own independent action to collectively work with other people independently. They want you to look to a Democrat or Republican, look above, to look to a savior. And I agree. They will do anything to distract you from your independence. So we predicted this, and we predicted that they do this in a recurring process. So typically they have the two parties, Republican, Democrat. The official symbols of them, so Hillary Clinton or Mitch McConnell, right? The most flagrant versions of the Democrat or Republican. But they know that people after a while say, well, I don't really like Hillary. She's pretty corrupt. I don't really like Mitch McConnell. He's pretty corrupt, right? Or whoever it is or the Bushes. So what they do is the shoulders of this bird also create the wings. And the wings are there to flap, even sometimes against the establishment, to make the masses think they're fighting for them. So on the left, they will create a Bernie Sanders, or they will create an AOC, or they'll create in the 80s, Jesse Jackson. who'll bark even at the establishment Democrats to keep the masses entertained. And that's the not so obvious establishment. And similarly, on the right, they will start the Tea Party, or they'll have Rand Paul hang out all day, or Thomas Massey even, a little more clever monkey, okay? Or Trump. And the goal of these people is to make sure people don't truly leave and build a bottoms-up movement that demands their rights, you know?
That's right.
So that's what they've been doing. Now what has occurred in the last two years is people have realized, particularly with the issue of Zionism, that both parties are part of this. And so they have realized people peeling away in droves from both parties. In Massachusetts, which is really the tip of the spear of corruption, global corruption or national corruption, 67% of the voters in Massachusetts have left the party and they're independents. But yet the media brands it as a blue state. It's only 26% Democrats, 7% Republicans, 67% independents. Nationally, 48% of Americans are independent voters. 26% Democrats, 26% Republicans. It's about the same, right? But yet we're told red versus blue, red versus blue. It's not true. So this truth is hidden from people. But the trend is people are moving away. So people like CIA agent Tucker Carlson, right? Or Andrew Yang, the Forward Party, right? They are given funds, supported, given lots of media exposure.
Yeah, I remember, you mentioned Andrew Yang. I remember when he was running, when he first started running, his issue was UBI, Universal Basic Income. And Elon Musk gave him $1 million. I tried to get him on the show to talk about Universal Basic Income, and he agreed to come on, and then canceled at the last minute because he realized that I didn't like Universal Basic Income.
And Elon Musk likes it. It's an enslavement model.
Yeah.
But what's interesting, one of our leaders in our movement worked for Andrew Yang, and he said, they're going to steal my election. They're going to steal my election. Had everyone on the floor of the convention tag, and there was a lot of election issues, and then he just caved in. Okay? So the establishment knows now that people are actually breaking, the wings are actually breaking from the parties. So what they are doing now, and the establishment is united. The Republicans and Democrats are one. Yeah. So the wings are not working anymore. So what they're doing is they're creating a fake independent movement, a la Tucker Carlson.
I agree.
That's what they're doing. And understand that Tucker Carlson, if you look at his entire life, and you have to look at people's entire lives, and you have to, whether it's personally, if you're going to be in a relationship with someone, look at their entire life, not what they just did, the last 2 days, give you a gift or be nice to you. Look at their whole life. Tucker Carlson is a master grifter. He comes from a CIA family. He wanted to be in the CIA. Then he joined CIA, CNN. All these media organizations are CIA. Come on, New York Times, all of them. And you're very naive if you don't think they are. And he grifted there as a Democrat, right? Then he saw the trend. He's like Wayne Gretzky. You could see where the puck is going, where the money is. He said, oh, it's going to the right. Then he goes to Fox. Okay?
Yep.
And then he gets funded by an Iranian guy to create his own network. The same Iranian guy who funds J.D. Vance. All right? So what you see is a guy who is one step ahead, knowing where the masses are going. And that's where, and he has said it by his own accord, I want to be famous, because he knows that fame has a cachet, value of power. And that's what he's about. This guy is an absolute agent of the swarm. That's who he serves.
I agree.
And the Republicans and Democrats duopoly need him to be the safety valve as people want to actually break to a true movement like ours, Truth, Freedom, Health. And this is why Tucker Carlson will never put me on his show. He's put everyone else on his show who's had me on their shows. Lower, even but he won't put me on because I exposed him for what he is in 2020. And even Glenn Greenwald won't do it. Talks a big game. Right?
Yeah.
So we have the opportunity now, David, to truly build a real independent movement. And we have to expose, and you're one of the few people I find who gets this.
Well, Tucker won't put me on his show either. Because
right. But I'm saying you went through the Alex Jones nonsense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Alex Jones is an opportunist.
That's right.
Okay? He knows things are wrong, but he wants the money. And that's really, really bad, because when you do that, you confuse people.
Yes.
You're not principled. And to say, well, he had to do that. Well, no, he didn't have to do that. You did that because of the money and because you're unprincipled. And when you do that, you confuse people. You delay people's actual learning opportunity. It's like being a bad teacher, right?
Yeah, it was. I remember Lionel introduced Alex Jones once at an event, and he introduced him as a guy who makes the truth unbelievable. And it was what we were talking about before. It's a standard CIA technique. You know, he goes out and talks about turning the frogs gay. He doesn't talk about the specifics about what these chemicals are and how they disrupt your hormones. He'll just give you the tagline, it turns the frogs gay. And he gets a lot of traction off of that, but it makes it sound like it's nonsense, and it's not nonsense.
Right. So when someone like me says it, you have to fight against the nonsense he's put forward.
That's right.
But we have a huge opportunity now, David, because of the hard work our independent movement has done consistently, because our views, you just keep going, move forward over and over again. It doesn't matter what looks like their victories. Our victories are we get the news out. We get the news out. We expand. Now we have about 500,000 people in our organization. We have an organization structure. We have our own, infrastructure. We train people. Truth, Freedom, Health is really a movement which is about raising citizenship consciousness. It's about making sure every family, people recognize that you have to take a certain piece of your day, just like you would do to pray or you do to work out or take care of your oral hygiene, whatever that is, right? You should take a certain piece of your day to be a good citizen. And we have a manual for doing that. Workbooks, right? Curricula, community, and we give people action. So my running for Senate in 2026 is great because we have nearly 70-80% name brand equity now in Massachusetts.
And you're going to be on the PBS debates as well. Tell people about that.
Right, so we were just invited to be on a national PBS debate, which will probably come in early October. And the interesting thing is, when we ran against Warren, one of the debate organizations put us out, was a violation of the law. And by the time we filed everything, the case becomes moot. But this time, PBS has invited us. But they threw in 2 criteria in order to be on the debate stage. One of the criteria is that we should have gotten our 10,000 signatures, certified signatures from citizens who want our nomination papers. Well, we were the first ones to do that. The Democrats and Republicans have yet to do that. So check, we did that. Then they added in, we have to have about $250,000, $250,000 in individual donations. Now, this time, David, I decided I didn't need money because last time we raised $2 million. And, we did all the lawn signs and we know they stole our election. So this time we decided to go much more underground, just people power. So we have hundreds of volunteers who are handing out flyers, making phone calls. We don't need the money, right? Because it's labor versus capital, right? We have people.
Right.
So they put in this thing, now you got to go raise $250K. And they only gave us like 10 days, 20 days.
Wow.
They sent us a letter late.
Maybe that's why the Republicans gave your opponent $250,000. Maybe that's the magic number that got him in the debate.
I think that's what it is. I think that's what it is. So we are about halfway there. So we have started doing a telethon and videos, quote unquote, begging for money, right? And we're doing that to tell people, look, if you get me on the debate stage, it's very rare they'll give a true independent, a fighter like me, access to national TV.
Extremely rare. Right? Extremely rare.
Very rare. Yeah, I think, David, you know how rare that is. So they've given us that, a very short time window. By September 1st, they're going to count all of our donations. By August 12th is one deadline, pre-primary, and then 12th through 19 days thereafter. So I think we're about 60, 70K. We went from like 20K to 60K, 70K, literally in like 5 days. So we're curving like that. So anyone listening, you can go to shivaforsenate.com/donate and donate as much as you can. But the goal is we'll finally have someone like me on a debate stage. I'm sure they're going to play all sorts of games, right? Try to silence. I mean, we'll see. They may even cancel the debate if I show up. That's my theory right now, because I don't think they want that, because it's a live debate, right? You can't control me. You can't control speech. So it's going to be, anyway, so that's one thing. But nonetheless, if you want to really see real entertainment, go to shiva4senate.com/donate. If you can share that links, David, with your viewers. But we need people to donate ASAP. But our campaign has this fundamental slogan, which I don't have a flyer here, David, but at some point, I don't know if you're recording this or if this gets live, if it's live.
We're live now, and it is also recorded as well.
Yeah, I don't know if we can, I don't know if I can bring up anything, but if we go to shivaforsenate.com and you scroll down, you'll see a flyer. I don't know if we can bring it up, if Travis can bring it up. But if you see that flyer, it's a great flyer. You know, I have a degree in design, but I've done lots of flyers since I was 14, 48 years. And when this came off the printing press, I said, Jesus, this is like lightning in a bottle. And I'll tell you why.
We'll put it up in post so people can see it when we upload it.
Yeah, I can bring it up if you want. But the flyer, you want me to bring it up or no?
No, sorry. We'll just add it afterwards.
But the flyer basically says it's black and white, old school 1920s style. One page. And it said 65% of Massachusetts is independent. It's actually 67. Okay. Big font. And then below that, it says, yet we keep voting for Democrat and Republican.
Yeah.
And then below that, it says, look what they have done to us. And it's got 5 examples, right? Cost of living, bridges and infrastructure, elections which aren't transparent. You know, you're getting sicker, right? And so on, right? So it lays these 5 things out. And housing is unaffordable, right? Because BlackRock and these guys come in and buy these homes. And then it says, you are independent, now be independent. And then to the right of it, there's a picture of me and my credentials. It never says vote Dr. Shiva. And we did this, David, deliberately because we want this to be a reflection to the independent voter. Like, what am I doing? 90% of people don't even know 65% is independent. They think it's a blue state. So first of all, when we go to grocery stores, as people come out and we hand it, and only the independent voters take it because we say independent for U.S. Senate. The Democrats typically say, oh yeah, he ran against Elizabeth Warren. He's a racist. That's what they say. And we say, great, you saved us 3 cents, 3.7 cents. We don't have to hand you this. And the Democrats will, Republicans say, is he a Trumper, right? And we'll say he was, right? So it's great because this is landing in the hands of the independent voter. The other thing is we did our own random calling. We called 5,000 independent voters. And we asked them, would you pledge for Dr. Shiva? Now, out of the 5,000 we called, we have all the data. We may publish this even. About 1,800 people actually picked up the phone. We had a conversation. Many of it went to voicemail or bad numbers. Out of those 1,800, 1,600 said they'd vote for me. That's nearly 70%.
Wow.
It's massive. So the independent voters typically flip. A majority of them vote right and the others vote left. And so the independent voters have never had a candidate. But moreover, they're hit with this relentless brainwashing. And the brainwashing is, you must vote Democrat or Republican. It's always some Armageddon is going to take place. If you don't, it's always some doomsday event if you don't vote. That's one brainwashing. The second thing that they do is, well, this guy may be a pedophile and this guy may be an axe murderer. Let's go with the axe murderer, right? The lesser of two evils. So what they're doing, mentally brainwashing people, is to lower their standards to like garbage. And this is what they've done. And then the third thing is, they say you're spoiling you're wasting your vote. So they have a number of brainwashing that they keep hitting people. But this flyer is beautiful because we will hand it out and you can watch people reading it all the way to their car. They'll take it in their car because it's hitting them in their third eye. It's saying, what am I doing? It's a very self-reflective mirror. And our goal is we get these out, volunteers doing it. We're wearing a hat that says independent. The flyer says independent, and you're saying it. So you create this triangle, this visual triangle for the person. And they're taking it volunteer. We're not shoving it in front of their face. So it's really powerful. So we have volunteers coming from all over the country, David. A guy just came in from Virginia. Someone just flew in from California. Someone just drove up from Florida. Someone came in from Pennsylvania. Because we know that Massachusetts is the epicenter of the global swarm. It is where all the headquarters of the swarm is. The backdoor portal to Twitter was created here. Social media companies at the Belfer School, Kennedy School. Every major economic collapse, every major disaster, every major war can be traced to the 1 mile radius between MIT and Harvard. Everything. All the thieves are created here. They are. So we're in the epicenter, and my winning a Senate election would be a bomb. Now, if you talk to analysts, they'll tell you that the 100 most powerful people in the world, you know who they are? They're the 100 US senators. Not in the 100 most powerful people in the world, is they're the 100 US senators. And those senators have quite a bit of power. They can call investigations. They can challenge unanimous consent, many other things. And these senators never exercise that power, ever. My being in Senate, I will exercise that power because I don't owe anything to the other 99 because I'm not in their game. Rand Paul plays a game. Bernie Sanders plays a game. It's all acting. So that's why if you look at my track record, David, of running an independent movement, winning, imagine what could happen if I'm in the Senate.
No, I agree.
And the last two campaigns I ran, David, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Those were exposing campaigns. But this one, we can actually win. We get on the debate stage.
Yeah.
Number two, we get those flyers out. And it's low cost. We're not going to spend millions on TV. It's those flyers. They don't have any volunteers, David.
Yeah.
They don't have any people. All they do is after Labor Day, this is how, and this is to everyone, this is how they run their campaigns. They each wing has their donors. They give these guys money in their left pocket. Then they take money out of the left pocket and put it in the right pocket, which is all the media companies. So it's just money circulating around. The people go to the same parties. It's not anything bottoms up. So after Labor Day, both will start taking TV ads. And that's a campaign. That's not a freaking campaign.
And the other aspect of it,
campaign.
The other aspect of it is you get a three-way debate. They can't just play this, well, I'm an axe murderer, but he's a pedophile game, right? The lesser of two evils. They can't play that game because, and you can't attack both the other people. You have to have something that you talk about that I think that's a little bit more positive. It's a big game changer to get into the debates. It's difficult enough for independents and third parties to get on the ballot. It's nearly impossible to get into the debate. So that is a big opportunity. Let me ask you something, though. I began the program today with talking about how they're trying to create a left and right divide over the data centers and the flock cameras and the police state that's coming in. And so I'm coming across article after article where the left complains about the right that's opposing this stuff. Oh, you don't want to oppose this because the right opposes it. But especially on the right will say, yeah, you got all these environmentalists and people like that on the left. You don't look at how the Democrat socialists are protesting these data centers. We need these data centers to fight China and all the rest of this stuff, right? And so they're starting to play the left-right game over the data centers. And I've never seen an issue where there is so much agreement that breaks the partisan divide. So they're going to focus, I think, on that particular issue. What have you said about that?
Well, I've been speaking about this as a technologist for many years. I don't know if you know, David, I have the 3 earliest U.S. patents on AI. I was one of the leading AI researchers in the 80s and 90s. I built one of the earliest LLM models. It was interesting when my 3 patents expired on text-based, chatbots. You can look at it via email. That's when ChatGPT came. Okay, so we were seriously thinking about suing them because there's a 6-year window. It's very expensive, but nonetheless, if you look at technology, always comes real innovation, and whenever technology comes, we as people get very excited because we know it can lead to greater liberation, innovation, wealth. But ultimately, that technology gets consolidated by a few. So when the printing press came, it was great. 5 major publishing companies came. And so if you wanted to get a best-selling book out, you had to find an agent, and they created all these layers. When the internet came in, I wrote a book called Arts and the Internet, and we talked about the power of the internet. But now that too got consolidated, right? With Google, YouTube, a few guys. Before, the idea was we each built our own websites, and we went direct. Once the search engine companies came and they got consolidated, they controlled who had access. So, and ultimately, when you look at AI, it's a very powerful technology, but that too is getting, the real issue is who's going to own the compute. Okay, who will own the compute? The technology should be for all. In fact,
and what purpose will they use it for? I mean, that's the thing that concerns me. When you look at the fact, and we saw this with Doge, they can go through a massive amount of data and find the needle in that haystack. And of course, we all know that we commit 3 felonies a day, as Harvey Silverglate talked about years ago. The laws become so complex that if you want to identify somebody, you target somebody, bring me the man, I'll find the crime. And Trump has already done that. He did that with Pulte, going back against some of the people that Trump wanted to attack or to get even with. And he went through their real estate history, and he found a couple of places where they did, where they said that they were going to use their property for personal services, and they used it. They never did live there, and so they're coming after them for mortgage fraud. That can happen to anybody when you have AI that's able to go back and audit each and every one of us all the time.
Yeah. So the real issue to me, David, whether it's AI, quantum computing, any of this, is who owns it. There are certain, and I believe that internet and AI, it's a longer discussion we'd have, should be free, and the compute should be unlimited for all people. So there was an organization which understood this, and the founders had it. And may sound anachronistic, but it is the United States Postal Service. The United States Postal Service was set up as an infrastructure by Franklin to support a communications technology, which was a postal service. So if you go look at the history of that, prior to the USPS being set up in 1787, the Crown owned all the distribution of letters, and they would open them up. And in fact, Benjamin Franklin was the Postmaster General for the Crown's post office. And he was aware that during the Revolutionary War, they were opening up everyone's letters. So this infrastructure of delivering mail is a technology, right? That was manipulated by the Crown. So that when the Postal Service was set up, it was sort of a quasi-government, private people's organization. It's quite fascinating if you look at the history of the Postal Service. And it allowed a letter to be sent from point A to point B, and the receiver is the one who paid for it. And they made it very cheap. And the Postal Service was an infrastructure play that was created to support open and free communication. And furthermore, if anyone opened a letter in transit, 22-year sentence in prison. That was the encryption, okay? Right? You got thrown in jail.
Right.
So quite a profound organization. But the philosophy of the Postal Service, by the founders, Franklin, the vision was infrastructure for people's communication. Okay? Now, in 1997, I created the first email system in 1978. And at that time, when I created that, I went on to have a second life in email, to analyze email for the White House, and I created a company called Echo Mail. But in 1997, I was very concerned as my company was growing, because I saw email volume was growing and snail mail volume in 1997 was going down. And I went to the post office and I said, hey, look, you guys should also have a public email service that is defended by the Constitution, meaning you can't open up mail, because private companies were taking over mail communication. And when people were signing up for email, they were giving up these constitutional rights. So government was outsourcing to private companies with email, and the private companies could open up letters because they're not bounded by the provisions within the Postal Service was. The Congress had put. Postal Service said, who are you? You're a 29-year-old kid. You don't know anything. We're bigger than Walmart. Get out of here. We don't need to be in the email business. But they should have. If Franklin were alive today, he would have made sure they were. And in fact, I said we should have public mail and social media. You see? Because any communication, because then you have a constitutional way to protect yourself way beyond encryption. All right. They didn't listen. And in 2011, Postal Service was going out of business. I was interviewed by Time Magazine. I said, these guys are idiots. They could have made a lot of money by charging, let's say, $25 a year for a postal protected. Now, I actually still believe that the internet and these email services, and in fact, AI compute, should be free for all Americans, free, unlimited, because it's going to unleash innovation. But what the elites or the swarm wants to do is to consolidate it among the few. And they're having this.
We've seen Sam Altman go before Congress say, this is just too powerful. You can't have ordinary people have access to this.
Now, everyone needs to have access to it. Because what AI actually is, it's not an application. It is work. It is workers. So if I start a company right now, if I have an idea, the ability for my idea to get executed is a function of getting workers. In order to get labor, I have to go to a VC. And the VC will ultimately own 90% of my company and will dictate what I do. But with AI, I don't have to hire workers. depending on my creativity, these workers can come up with great ideas. So you could have infinite ideas, infinite wealth in some ways for all humanity. It's two ways to look at it, right? In that model, but the elites don't want to do that. They want to restrict AI and they want to get rid of working people.
But let me turn it to the combination of flock cameras and data centers, which makes it a police surveillance state. The ability
that's where they want to use it.
Yeah, the ability to do to basically do warrantless tracking of cars. And that's really the concern that I have about it. I mean, you got some people on the left that are concerned about water usage and utility bills and things like that. And those are legitimate concerns. But those could all be handled. The thing that I'm concerned about is the surveillance aspect of it. Have you addressed that?
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. If each one of us has AI compute, we will build technologies against that, David. Say, but if they have all the AI compute and it's consolidated, we don't have any way to fight. So my view is that human creativity is infinite. It's really absolutely infinite, and history shows that. But the ability to execute on that creativity is a function of the tools. Now, when I created email in 1978, how was a 14-year-old kid able to do that? Because I was given access to mainframe computers because I, went to NYU as a kid, and I was, I worked my butt off, but I was able to get access in Rutgers Medical School to people who were 40, 50 years older than me and given access to the compute. Now, imagine how many other 14-year-old kids there are. So my view as an innovator who's keeps innovating stuff and new inventions is that innovation is in everyone's DNA. Innovation can occur anytime, any place, by anybody, if you give everyone infrastructure or equal access. So the AI compute must be dispersed to everyone. That's how we fight it, because then we'll come up with our own solutions. When quantum computing comes, it's going to reduce a lot of the energy issues, actually. And it's actually going to bust up even Bitcoin, right? Because you can break a lot of these prime factorization. But the bottom line is there are certain technologies, particularly AI, which are human knowledge. It's all knowledge extracted from us. It cannot be centralized. So once it's centralized, it becomes a surveillance state. Once it's centralized, it's about getting rid of working people. It's about mass depopulation.
And I think one of the things that's important coming from you, because of your experience in tech and because you see the bigger picture and you got a historical perspective, but you also have a tech perspective, we're putting stuff out there and we're not even thinking about how it's going to be used. In other words, we've got a local city here, Knoxville, spent nearly $10 million putting in a bunch of flock cameras, and they never thought about any rules about how these things are going to be used until after the fact. They still haven't put anything out there. We had some people say, well, you really need to hang on with that. We're going to end the program, but I want to go ahead and play it. We're ending the program, but can you hang on for just another minute or so? Because I've got a couple of questions that people put on here, and we're going to let it run just a little bit longer for today. Well, are you able to stay around a little bit longer, Dr.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I have interest. Yeah, we'll stay.
All right. Well, I want to say the people that are listening to us live on radio, thank you so much for joining us. And we will have an extended interview with Dr. Shiva. We've got some questions that people had for him, and we're going to give those to him. And that'll be on the upload that we put up later today on Rumble. Thank you. All right. Now let's continue with this, because I wanted to get some of these questions there. One of them is from Lance, who's working the board today, and he said, what do you think about this first past the post voting system? Because I think that's one of the things that locks us into this two-party system. What do you think about that?
Which one, David? The first past
the post, so that we've got as soon as somebody gets 50%, they're in, or the highest one that is in there. We don't have, in other words, some of the alternatives like ranked choice voting and things like that would be.
Yeah, I've heard of ranked choice. It sounds like that. I believe this is where if you get a plurality, right?
Yes. Well, what happens with ranked choice is you have everybody gets to go through and rank their choices. Now, if the first guy doesn't get more than 50%, your first choice doesn't, then what they do is if nobody gets past 50%, then they come back and they knock off the one choice of everybody, and then they go back and tabulate these things again until they get somebody that goes past 50%.
And then in that model, is the guy who gets 50% win? Is that the winner?
I think so. Yeah, Lance, you can address this if you want.
So first past the post, it's the person that gets the fewest votes gets taken off the ballot. So people list, their first choice and second choice. There's also approval rating voting where you just give each candidate a number from 1 to 10 or 1 to 5 and tabulate that all up at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Just
so
anything.
They gradually drop off the people. It's kind of the type of thing that we used to do in a nomination convention where we would have a lot of candidates who would be running, and the lowest vote total goes out and you keep doing it over and over again until you got a winner that's over 50%.
It's just to avoid the whole splitting the vote thing, where, if you have two people that are very similar in policy, they can, start leeching votes from each other.
Yeah, that kind of addresses the whole wasting your vote type of argument that they have.
Yeah, so let's just look at that. Let's say you have 3 candidates. I mean, let's just apply it here. Let's just look at a scenario, right? Let's say you have Republican, Democrat, and Independent, myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in that model, people go vote, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you keep voting, right, in this model?
Well, what happens is, let's say that you're the number 2 choice of a lot of people, and maybe the Republican drops off. So then what they do is they go back and they take the people who had voted for the guy who was the lowest voter, right? The people who he was their first choice, they go back and they reallocate those. So if you were the second choice, you would get those votes.
But how do they reallocate those votes?
So when
they do it by computer.
When you put your ballot in, you put your first choice and your second choice and third choice.
I see. Okay. Right. So let's say you have Republican, Democrat, and Independent, and 30% of people vote for the Democrat, or let's say 40% vote for the Democrat, 40% vote for me, and 20% voted for the Republican.
Mm-hmm.
They look at all that 20% and look at what their second choice was.
That's right.
Right. And then they just reallocate. So it is like ranked choice voting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sort of similar.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Lance? Yeah.
Yeah, this is ranked choice I was talking about.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I have to model it out, mathematically. But I think the intention there is that if the Republican was similar to my views, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that case, I would end up getting his votes because people would have put him first because they were ours, right? Just for party loyalty. And they may have put me, Dr. Shiva, second.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm an independent, but still have certain views that I support.
And it also should address it. I mean, the Republicans oppose this very vehemently, but you look at it, their whole argument is, and sometimes the Democrats who say, well, you're costing us, a third party or an independent is costing us the vote. But when you look at it, they wouldn't have that stolen vote argument. That'd be completely gone. They'd say, you're the first choice.
At the outset, Travis and Lance, it sounds not like a bad model, because it looks like if I'm a voter, and I'm typically voting party loyalty, but I know this guy's saying good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give my vote there, as a loyalist.
Mm-hmm.
And then as a principled person, at least I'll give the vote over to me, right?
That's right.
Right? So in that sense, it could be pretty good, right?
I agree. I've got another.
Yeah.
Go
anyway,
ahead.
I think it's headed in a direction that could be supportive of alternate views.
I agree. I think so. I got another question here. This is from Jerry Alatalo. He says, please ask Shiva for his serious take on the bombshell Dr. David Martin appearance last night on Jimmy Dore. I don't know what that was. Do you?
No, but I don't know what, so I've had a feud with Jimmy Dore. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Dore, again, is an opportunist. I do know, so during COVID, if you remember, I was the first guy who came out there. Jimmy Dore really didn't know what was going on. Jimmy Dore was a Booby Kennedy star. You can fill in the blank, okay? And he was promoting Kennedy. And I was hammering Kennedy for what he was actually doing, which was promoting lockdowns, making the anti-vax argument versus, the immune health issue, the fake Maha movement. And then Dore would attack me online. And then after Kennedy went completely pro-Zionist, he said the Palestinians are the most pampered people on the planet. Then Dore started attacking Kennedy. But more recently, he started appreciating Kennedy again. Because if you notice something fascinating has occurred, it's a distraction piece, David. Kennedy was on this thing and Laura Logan and these people were promoting him. Again, opportunists. Kennedy was saying, oh my God, they're stealing organs from people. Okay. Big, making that huge news. Meanwhile, two important things got passed by his blessings. A CDC director gets appointed who's massively pro-vaccine mandate.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That's a big news.
Yeah.
And the second thing was they approved the mRNA flu vaccine. So these two things were the big things. Now the mRNA vaccine was just for COVID. It's for all flus. So that's what Moderna always wanted, right?
Yep.
They wanted the entire market.
And he distracts people with an executive order about childhood vaccines, which is just a head fake. I mean, he doesn't have the ability to set these vaccine schedules. They're set by the state and local government.
Exactly. So everything Kennedy does is to appease this manipulated Maha people who we actually broke away a lot of people from him. So I'm not sure what David Martin is, except, I don't know much about him. I do know he says stuff, but if he believes what he says, people have told him, why aren't you supporting our movement? Here's the thing, David, we actually have built a political bottoms-up movement. You'll have these grifters talking, getting views and clicks, but we actually have an organization. We get people to do action. Why aren't they supporting? They will go to great means not to mention my name or our movement. That's what I find fascinating.
Yeah.
It's really fast. Like, we actually have an organization, right? So that tells me they will expose stuff. And that's a class that I put David Martin into. And if Jimmy Dore is giving him views, Jimmy Dore, again, will not put me on. People have repeatedly asked him. So I would urge, and this is not being egomaniacal, is go judge these podcasters. Ask them, why don't you put Dr. Shiva on? MIT PhD, multiple degrees, right? Inventor, scientist, publishes in all the major journals, won every award. Why aren't you putting him on? And he's been on the forefront of fighting and he has a movement. Why don't you put him on? And that's a litmus test for you to find out whether these podcasters are real or not. David will put me on because David Knight, as I know, is principled and he wants to build a movement. He wants to see fundamental change from below.
If you got something that you're working on, why wouldn't people want to hear what you have to say? I mean, we want to hear all views out there.
But David, they all follow me. Joe Rogan follows me, right? But he will put others who've put me on their shows who are, if you look at their views and clicks, far lower than mine. But they go to extreme things not to mention my name and to intentionally not put me on. Because by putting me on, it blows up everything for them because I have made it, even in the standards of the swarm, without ever compromising. You see, and my journey reveals to people that you don't have to compromise. You can be principled and still be quote unquote successful. They want to train people into monkey brains that you must beg to them. You must go to Epstein Island. You must do these things in order to get success.
I agree.
So my journey completely breaks that. And it's unfortunate for them because all of them are bought and paid for. Jimmy Dore's bought and paid for. Alex Jones is bought and paid for. Joe Rogan is bought and paid for. They are controlled either internally by their desire for incredible wealth or money, or by external puppet masters. Nonetheless, they're controlled by mammon. And that's where we're at. So I don't know about Martin, but I wasn't that impressed by him. Many people have reached out to him. He does a shtick, but he does not support building a bottoms-up movement. He doesn't.
I agree. Yeah, it is. It really is bottoms up, and it is at the local level that we have to get active.
David, I'm doing your show right now. I have 3 volunteers at the local grocery store who I'm going to be training how to hand out flyers. How many Senate candidates do that?
That's absolutely
But that's what we're doing. That's true action. Like, I have to go out. It's almost 95 degrees here. People are coming in from different parts of Massachusetts. But I want to teach them how to get over their shyness, because it's very hard for citizens to take time out of their workday, stand in front of a grocery store, and interact with people. The swarm wants us to be in this 2D social media world, which is highly, highly controllable, manipulable. They don't want you going out in the multi-dimensional physical world, seeing people, and you'll find out people are not all demoralized. People, when they see our flyers, are like, this is cool, right? They get excited. They want people to live in this mode of, friction.
I've got 2 quick questions for you. One of them is a little bit challenging. The other one maybe is a home run for you to hit here. Let's see, this is Time Non-Tide says, ask Dr. Shiva if he supports public health, that is government coercing Americans. He once said that, don't scroll that up, pull it back there, I lost it. He once said that old people perhaps ought to have been isolated. Do you want to say, what would you say about that?
That old
people ought to have been isolated, I guess,
No, I never
referring to
said that.
COVID. Okay.
No.
Right.
If you go look at the letter I wrote to Trump, I broke it up into 4 groups. I said you have people who are in ICUs, who have major, immune issues, right? I said those people should be quarantined and protected. In the worst case, if they have serious illness. Number one group. The second group of people was, we can bring up the letter. You can go to Shiva for Senate if you people find it. But I said there are 4 groups of people: healthy people, people who have COVID, and I forget the other group. People who are immunocompromised. And the first group were people who are actually in ICUs, okay, and have serious health issues. So for all of them, I said that people should take a dose of high-dose vitamin A, high-dose vitamin D, zinc, iodine, quercetin. You can find the protocol. The healthy people should go back to work, and they should be isolated. They should work, and they should also take about 5,000, 10,000 IUs of vitamin D and work normally. There was no reason to shut down the economy. I took a very small sliver of people, and I said the people who had COVID, they should take that and get, if they were heading into the ICU, 100 grams of vitamin C titrated, because that really boosts up your immune system and stops the cytokine storm. So my goal was the right medicine for the right person at the right time. That's personalized medicine. It's not one size fits all, which is what they want to do.
Yeah.
So in this case, you're saying, okay, these people are healthy. Okay, these people are heading into the ICU. They need something to really support their immune system. These people are immunocompromised, and for them, they need a much higher dose of vitamin A and D, not just 10,000 IUs, 50,000 IUs. And the people who are seriously ill, they should obviously rest and take care of themselves. They shouldn't be, frankly, exposed to all the chaos that's going around. Okay,
right. Of course, the game was that starting 2 months before 9/11, the game was to just lock everybody down until you got your vaccine ready, and nothing else.
No,
allowed,
my model, and none of it was to. And in fact, the people were isolated. They should go on a high dose vitamin A and D in a boost, right? But the idea was, if you're already in the hospital, if you're sick, why should you? If anyone should be quarantined, it should be those people.
Well, okay, the next one should be an easy one for you. Hi, Boo. So what is Shiva's view on Israel controlling our Congress?
I think it's an easy one. I think you guys may see the video I did, which went viral, and it came out very naturally. It's a term that came out and it went viral. Everyone started using it. But just to let you know that, to me, the Israel question really brings up the big difference between being Jewish, which is really more of an ethnic question. A lot of my friends growing up were Jewish, and a lot of them were anti-Zionist. They knew the difference. And the bigger issue is you don't have to be Jewish to be Zionist. There are Muslim Zionists. There are a lot of Hindu Brahmin Zionists.
A lot of Christian Zionists. Yeah.
A lot of Christian evangelical Zionists. You don't have to be Jewish. In fact, Jewish who are Zionists are a very small portion. Since 1984, David, when I learned about all this, I've been a big proponent of educating people on this. I ran lots of protests against people like Mayor Kahana when he came to MIT. Educating people this fundamental difference, because Zionism is a political ideology. It's very much like Brahmanism of the caste system in India, or Nazism, right? They take some religious stuff, wrap it with politics, but the idea is to justify a few people should rule over a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
And AIPAC, to answer the question, obviously I do not support them, is the manipulation of that at the level of elected officials. Who basically they control their policy and many policy of the United States. But I think the bigger issue here is that Zionism is racism in the service of the swarm or imperialism. That's what it really is, just like Brahmanism is. So in Hindu, you have the Hindu religion, we can talk about that. Then they wrapped it around Brahmanical thought, where a few people should control over the 1.6 billion Hindus, right? So that was based on these people being better than the rest. So these political ideologies, when they're, framed into religious Contexts are very, very powerful to manipulate people.
That's right.
And that's what Zionism is. But it was done by a guy who was an atheist, Theodore Herzl, you know?
And that's the power of combining church and state, really. It's what we're talking about
Exactly.
here. And it's very anti-American. Well, if you were going to take money from AIPAC, you wouldn't be worried about getting on the debate stage. But thank you for not doing that. And again, just to remind people, Dr. Shiva has been offered an invitation to get on to the PBS debate there as a Senate candidate. And he just has to cross the threshold for the donations. He'd not really been focusing on it this particular time because he had changed the way the structure was set up. So it's a last-minute purge. If you can help him, go to his web. Where's the best place people can go to?
They can go to Shiva, SHIVA, numeral 4, Senate.com. There's a donate button, or if you want to go direct Shiva for Senate.com/donate.
Okay.
And we're very transparent. We list how much we currently have. There's a thermometer. It's right up there so you can see it,
right.
How much we have right now.
All right. So we'll put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for staying extra time even with us today. I appreciate it. It's been fascinating to talk to you. Thank you so much, Dr. Shiva Iyer.
Thanks, David. Be well.
Thank you. And thank you, folks. That's our program for today. Have a good day. The common man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at thedavidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. thedavidknightshow.com.